Jake Mitchell opened his eyes and felt blood running down his face. His head hurt badly and his ears were ringing like church bells. The taste of metal filled his mouth as he tried to move his arms and legs. Everything around him was dark except for the red emergency lights that blinked on and off in the broken ship. He was upside down in his seat and pieces of metal were everywhere. The transport ship had crashed hard into the ground and most of it was now twisted like a pretzel. Jake could smell smoke and burning fuel, which made him move faster to get out. He pressed the release button on his safety belt and fell down onto what used to be the ceiling of the ship. Jake looked around for his squad, but saw only broken bodies and blood. His friend Danny was crushed under a heavy beam and his sergeant, Lisa, had her neck bent the wrong way. All 12 members of his unit were dead and he was the only one left alive. The crash had killed everyone else in seconds, but somehow Jake had survived. He crawled through the wreckage looking for his gear and found his rifle still working. His powered armor suit had cracks in it, but the power was still on. The suit helped him move and made him stronger, but now it was damaged. Jake knew he had to be careful because if the suit stopped working, he would be in big trouble. Outside the ship, Jake could see the alien planet Vex Prime through a hole in the hull. The sky was purple, and there were 2 small suns in the distance. The ground was red rock with no trees or grass anywhere. This was not a place where humans could live without help from their suits and ships. Jake checked his supplies and found he had 3 days of food and water. His rifle had enough bullets for maybe 100 enemies if he was lucky and did not miss. The suit had 2 extra power cells, which meant he could keep it running for 1 week if he was careful. After that, he would be just a regular human with no special help. The worst news came when Jake tried to use the emergency radio. The crash had broken the big communication dish on top of the ship. He could not call for help and nobody knew where he was. The mission was supposed to be a simple patrol flight, but they had been shot down by enemy ships and crashed in the middle of nowhere. Jake climbed out of the ship and stood on the rocky ground. The air was thin and hard to breathe without his suit helping him. In the distance, he could see lights and movement, lots of movement. There were thousands of alien ships and vehicles spread out across the landscape like ants at a picnic. The Zephyrians had built a huge base here, and Jake was right in the middle of it. The Zephyrians were bug-like aliens with 6 legs and big black eyes. They moved in groups and never seemed to think for themselves. Jake had fought them before, and knew they were dangerous because there were always so many of them. They would attack in huge waves and try to overwhelm their enemies with numbers. Instead of smart fighting, Jake counted the enemy forces he could see and his heart sank. There had to be at least 1 million Zephyrian soldiers getting ready for their next attack on human worlds. Their ships filled the sky and their ground vehicles covered the red rocks like a metal carpet. He was one human soldier facing an entire army of aliens who wanted to kill all humans. But Jake was a Marine and Marines never gave up. His drill instructor had always said that 1 Marine was worth 100 enemies if he was smart and brave. Jake was going to test that idea because he had no choice. He could not run away because there was nowhere to go, and he could not hide forever because his supplies would run out. Jake made a plan in his head. He would use hit-and-run attacks to hurt the enemy while staying alive. He would be like a ghost that strikes fast and disappears before they could catch him. The Zephyrians were used to fighting big battles with lots of soldiers, but they might not know how to deal with one human who refused to play by their rules. He picked up his rifle and checked his suit one more time. The damage was not too bad, and he could still move fast and jump high. Jake looked at the alien army spread out before him and smiled for the first time since the crash. They had numbers, but he had something they did not have. He had human stubbornness and the will to fight even when everything looked hopeless. Jake Mitchell walked away from his crashed ship and into the alien wilderness. Behind him lay the bodies of his friends, and ahead of him waited 1 million enemies, who did not know they were about to meet their worst nightmare. One human soldier was about to show them what Marines were made of. Jake spent his first day watching the Zephyrian patrols from behind rocks and broken metal. He learned their patterns and saw how they moved in straight lines like robots. The bug aliens always walked the same paths and never looked around for danger. They trusted their numbers to keep them safe, but Jake knew that was their weakness. On the second morning, Jake set up his first ambush. He found a narrow pass between two big rocks where the aliens had to walk single file. Jake climbed up high and waited with his rifle ready. When 6 Zephyrians came walking through, he shot them all in less than 10 seconds. The aliens made clicking sounds as they died, and their blue blood splashed on the red rocks. Jake quickly took their weapons and ran away before more enemies could find him. The Zephyrian guns were strange and felt alive in his hands. They were warm and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Jake figured out that the weapons used some kind of biological energy instead of bullets or lasers. Like human guns, the dead aliens had small devices on their arms that looked like computers. Jake could not read their language, but he saw pictures and maps on the screens. He learned where the enemy camps were and which paths they used most often. This information was better than gold because it helped him plan his next attacks. Jake made his second attack near a supply convoy. The Zephyrians were carrying boxes of equipment and moving slow because of the heavy load. Jake waited until they were far from help and then threw rocks to make noise on one side. When the aliens turned to look, he shot them from the other side. All 8 enemies died before they knew what hit them. This time Jake took more than just weapons. He found food that his suit said was safe for humans to eat and water that would keep him alive longer. The aliens also had power cells that might work with his suit if he was clever enough to figure out how to connect them. Jake was starting to see that he could live off the enemy supplies if he was careful. The third attack was Jake's biggest risk yet. He saw a group of 12 Zephyrians setting up some kind of communication equipment near a hill. Jake knew that destroying their radios would make it harder for them to coordinate attacks. He crawled close to their camp and waited until most of them were busy working. Jake threw one of the alien weapons like a grenade, and it exploded in green fire. 3 Zephyrians died right away, and the others started running around in panic. Jake shot 4 more before they could organize, and then ran away as fast as his suit would carry him. Behind him, he could hear the communication equipment burning and making loud crackling sounds. The aliens were starting to get angry and scared. Jake could see larger patrols moving around looking for him. They sent out search teams in groups of 20 instead of 6, and they carried bigger weapons. But the Zephyrians still moved in predictable patterns, and Jake was learning to use that against them. Jake set up traps using the alien weapons he had captured. He learned that if he damaged the biological parts of their guns, they would explode when someone tried to use them. Jake left these broken weapons where the aliens would find them and then watched from far away as the traps killed more enemies. The alien food was helping Jake stay strong, and the captured power cells were keeping his suit running. He had been on the planet for 5 days now and had killed over 40 Zephyrians without losing a single fight. Jake was starting to feel like maybe he could survive long enough to make a real difference, but the aliens were adapting too. Jake saw them starting to check their weapons more carefully, and they were avoiding the places where he had attacked before. Some of the patrols had started carrying special sensors that might be able to find him even when he was hiding. Jake knew he had to change his tactics or they would eventually catch him. Jake decided to move his attacks to different parts of the alien base. Instead of staying in one area, he would strike all over the place to keep them confused. He found a cave system in the rocks where he could hide his supplies and move between different locations without being seen from above. The cave had water dripping from the ceiling and was cool compared to the hot surface. Jake set up 3 different supply dumps in separate caves so that even if the aliens found one, he would still have backup equipment. He was thinking like a soldier now instead of just trying to survive from day to day. On his 6th day, Jake attacked a fuel depot that was guarded by 20 Zephyrians. He used the alien explosives to blow up their fuel tanks and create a huge fire that could be seen from miles away. The explosion killed 15 guards and destroyed enough fuel to ground dozens of alien aircraft for days. Jake watched the fire burn from a safe distance and saw hundreds of Zephyrians running around trying to put it out. They were so focused on the emergency that they forgot to search for him. Jake smiled and realized that chaos was his best friend in this war. The more confusion he could create, the better his chances of staying alive and hurting the enemy. Commander Vextha slammed his forearms on the metal table and made angry clicking sounds. The big Zephyrian had bright red markings on his shell that showed he was important. His black eyes were bigger than the other aliens, and his brain case was twice as large. He was the smartest bug on the planet, and he was very angry about one small human dot. The commander looked at reports of destroyed supplies and dead soldiers. In 1 week, the human had killed over 60 Zephyrians and blown up 3 important facilities. The other commanders were starting to question Vextha's ability to control his territory. This was bad for his reputation and his future in the Zephyrian military. Vextha called his best hunters to his command center. These were special Zephyrians who were bigger and faster than regular soldiers. They had better weapons and stronger armor. Most importantly, they could think for themselves instead of just following orders like robots. The commander gave them one job: find the human and kill him. Jake did not know about the hunters yet, but he could feel that something was different. The regular patrols had gotten smaller, but he saw new aliens moving around who looked more dangerous. These new enemies did not walk in straight lines, and they checked behind rocks and inside caves. Jake knew he was being hunted by professionals now. The first time Jake met the hunters, he almost died. He was setting up an ambush near a water processing plant when 6 of the special aliens appeared behind him like ghosts. Jake only survived because his suit's sensors warned him at the last second. He rolled sideways as energy blasts burned the air where his head had been. Jake found himself in the first real fight of his life. The hunters moved fast and shot accurately. They spread out to surround him and used team tactics that were much smarter than anything he had seen before. Jake had to use every trick he knew to stay alive for the next 5 minutes. His human reflexes saved him. When one hunter tried to grab him with long claws, Jake twisted away and shot the alien in the face with his rifle. Green blood splattered everywhere as the hunter fell backwards. The other 5 hunters became even more aggressive when they saw their teammate die. Jake jumped between rocks and used his suit's power to move faster than the aliens expected. He threw captured grenades to create smoke and confusion. When the hunters could not see clearly, Jake picked them off one by one. But these enemies were tough, and it took multiple shots to kill each one. After 10 minutes of fighting, Jake had killed all 6 hunters, but his suit was damaged and he was almost out of ammunition. His left arm was burned by an energy blast, and his helmet had a crack that let in the thin air. Jake realized that if he met another hunter team like this one, he might not survive. Jake changed his tactics to avoid direct fights with the hunters. He started using psychological warfare to make the aliens afraid and confused. Jake would leave dead Zephyrians arranged in strange patterns that scared the other soldiers. He would steal equipment and leave it in places where the aliens would find it and wonder how he got there. The best psychological trick was leaving false trails that led to empty caves or dangerous cliffs. Jake would make footprints in soft ground that pointed toward traps he had set up. When the hunters followed these trails, they would find explosive devices waiting for them. 3 more hunter teams died this way before they learned to be more careful. Jake also started making fake camps to waste the aliens' time and resources. He would build shelters that looked like someone was living there but were actually empty. The Zephyrians would surround these fake camps with hundreds of soldiers, only to find nobody inside. This made them angry and frustrated, which led to more mistakes. The regular soldiers were getting scared of the ghost human who could appear anywhere and kill anyone. Jake heard them making nervous clicking sounds when they thought nobody was listening. Some of the patrols were walking closer together and jumping at shadows. Fear was spreading through the alien army like a disease. Commander Vextha was getting desperate and angry. He had lost 12 hunter teams and over 100 regular soldiers to 1 human. His superiors were asking hard questions about his competence. The commander decided to take personal command of the hunt and bring his entire reserve force into the search. Jake watched from a hilltop as thousands of Zephyrians spread out across the landscape looking for him. They had vehicles with searchlights and aircraft with heat sensors. The commander was using a quarter of his entire army just to catch 1 human soldier. Jake smiled because this meant the aliens were not preparing for their planned attack on human colonies, but Jake also knew he was in serious danger now. With so many enemies looking for him, it would be much harder to hide and move around. His supplies were running low, and his suit needed repairs that he could not do with alien equipment. Jake needed a new plan, or he would eventually be caught and killed. Jake decided to take a huge risk. Instead of running away from the massive search operation, he would sneak into the middle of it. The aliens would never expect him to hide among their own forces. Jake found a damaged Zephyrian armor suit that was about his size and began modifying it to fit over his human equipment. The alien armor smelled terrible and felt slimy against his skin, but it might fool the searchers long enough for Jake to get close to important targets. Jake practicing walking like a Zephyrian and making their clicking sounds. He was not perfect, but in the dark and confusion he might pass for just another soldier. Jake put on the stolen Zephyrian armor and looked at himself in a piece of broken metal. The alien suit made him look like a bug from far away, but up close anyone could see he was wrong. The armor was too small and his human shape did not match the six-legged alien body. Jake hoped the darkness would hide the differences long enough for his plan to work. Walking in the alien armor was hard because it was made for creatures with different joints and muscles. Jake had to move slowly and copy the way Zephyrians clicked, their feet on the ground. He practiced the alien posture with his back curved and his arms held close to his sides like a giant insect. The weapons depot Jake had found was the biggest target on the planet. It was a huge underground facility carved into a mountain where the aliens stored enough firepower to destroy entire human worlds. Jake had watched the place for 2 days and counted over 500 guards protecting it. Getting inside would be almost impossible, but the reward would be worth the risk. Jake joined a group of Zephyrian workers who were carrying supplies into the depot. He kept his head down and made quiet clicking sounds like the other aliens. The guards at the entrance were bored and did not look closely at each worker. Jake's heart pounded as he walked past them into the most secure facility on the planet. Inside the depot, Jake saw weapons that made his human technology look like toys. There were energy cannons that could punch holes through starships and bombs that could crack open planets. Rows of alien fighters and bombers filled huge hangar spaces. Jake realized this was not just a supply dump but a staging area for the invasion of human space. The depot had multiple levels connected by ramps that spiraled down into the mountain. Jake followed the other workers deeper underground while studying the layout and security systems. He saw that the power core for the entire facility was at the very bottom level where the most dangerous weapons were stored. Jake's plan was simple but deadly. If he could overload the main power core, it would cause a chain reaction that would destroy the entire depot and everything in it. The explosion would be so big that it might damage other alien facilities for miles around. But first he had to get to the power core without being discovered. The disguise worked for the first hour as Jake moved through the depot pretending to work. He carried boxes and followed the other aliens while secretly mapping out the facility in his head. The Zephyrians did not suspect that a human was walking among them planning their destruction, but Jake's luck ran out when a supervisor alien looked at him too closely. The supervisor made questioning clicking sounds and pointed at Jake's arms, which were clearly too short for a real Zephyrian. Jake tried to back away, but other aliens began gathering around him with suspicious looks. Jake dropped his disguise and pulled out his rifle in one smooth motion. He shot the supervisor first and then sprayed bullets at the other aliens before they could react. The underground facility erupted in alarm sounds and flashing lights as Jake ran toward the power core level. Hundreds of Zephyrian guards came running from all directions, firing energy weapons that lit up the dark tunnels. Jake used his human speed and agility to dodge between cover while moving deeper into the mountain. His suit's power helped him jump over obstacles and climb walls that the aliens could not reach. The chase became a running gun battle through the weapon storage areas. Jake shot alien guards while explosive blasts from their weapons destroyed their own equipment around him. Missiles and bombs started kooking off from the heat and stray shots. The depot was becoming a war zone that was destroying itself. Jake reached the power core level with 50 aliens close behind him. The core was a huge pulsing mass of biological machinery that provided energy for the entire facility. It looked like a giant heart made of metal and tubes. Jake could see control panels covered with alien symbols that he could not read. The pursuing guards caught up with Jake near the power core and surrounded him with weapons pointed at his chest. Jake was trapped with nowhere to run and not enough ammunition to fight his way out. But he had one advantage that the aliens did not know about. He understood human technology better than they understood their own biological systems. Jake pulled out his rifle's power cell and began rewiring it with cables from his damaged suit. The aliens watched in confusion as the human worked with small electronic parts. They did not realize that Jake was turning his power cell into a bomb that would disrupt the biological power core. When Jake connected the modified power cell to the alien machinery, the core began pulsing faster and making loud warning sounds. The biological systems were fighting against the human technology like an infection in a living body. Jake smiled and told the aliens in English that they were all about to die together. The Zephyrian guards tried to shoot Jake, but the power core was already destabilizing and filling the chamber with dangerous energy. The aliens ran for the exits as their own facility began to tear itself apart. Jake stayed behind to make sure the overload would continue even if the aliens tried to stop it. The power core's biological circuits were burning out one by one as Jake's human technology poisoned the alien systems. Emergency lights flashed red, and computer voices spoke warnings in the clicking Zephyrian language. Jake had maybe 2 minutes before the core exploded and took the entire mountain with it. Jake ran for the surface as fast as his damaged suit could carry him. Behind him, the power core was screaming like a living thing in pain. The walls and ceiling began to crack as the mountain itself started to shake. Jake could hear the sounds of weapons exploding in the storage areas below as the chain reaction spread. Jake reached the depot entrance just as the mountain began to collapse. He threw himself behind a rock formation as the biggest explosion he had ever seen lit up the alien sky. The weapons depot disappeared in a ball of fire that could be seen from space. The blast wave knocked Jake unconscious and buried him under falling debris. Jake woke up buried under rocks and twisted metal with his ears still ringing from the explosion. His suit was cracked and sparking but still working enough to keep him alive. Above him, he could see a hole in the debris where sunlight was coming through. Jake dug his way out like a man climbing from his own grave. The landscape around the destroyed depot looked like the surface of a dead planet. The explosion had created a crater 3 miles wide where the mountain used to be. Pieces of alien aircraft and weapons were scattered everywhere like deadly confetti. The air smelled of burning metal and alien chemicals that made Jake's eyes water, but the most amazing thing Jake saw was the silence from the Zephyrian communication systems. The explosion had destroyed the main planetary communication array that connected all the alien forces to their hive mind network. Without constant orders from their commanders, the individual Zephyrian units were confused and acting on their own. Jake watched alien patrols wandering around without clear direction. Some groups were still searching for him, while others had returned to their bases to wait for new orders that would never come. The perfect coordination that made the Zephyrians so dangerous was broken, and they did not know how to fix it. Near the edge of the crater, Jake found something even more interesting than confused aliens. There were other creatures working in the wreckage who were not Zephyrians. These beings had gray skin and 4 arms, and they moved carefully like they were afraid of being caught. Jake realized these must be slaves that the aliens had captured from other worlds. Jake watched the gray aliens secretly gathering pieces of technology from the destroyed depot. They worked in small groups and communicated with hand signals instead of speaking out loud. When Zephyrian patrols came near, the slaves would pretend to be clearing debris, but Jake could see they were actually collecting specific items. One group of slaves came close to where Jake was hiding, and he heard them speaking in a language that sounded almost human. Jake's suit computer identified the language as Corvani, which was spoken by an alien race that humans had met before the war started. The Corvani had been peaceful traders until the Zephyrians conquered their worlds. Jake decided to take a huge risk and make contact with the Corvani slaves. He slowly crawled out of his hiding place with his hands visible and his weapon lowered. The gray aliens saw him and froze in fear. Jake spoke to them in simple English, hoping his suit's translator would help them understand. The leader of the Corvani group was an old alien named Kex, who had been an engineer before his people were enslaved. Kex could speak broken English from his trading days with humans. He told Jake that thousands of slaves from different worlds were forced to maintain Zephyrian technology and build their weapons. Kex explained that without the hive mind network controlling them, the slave overseers were acting confused and giving contradictory orders. Many slaves were starting to remember what freedom felt like, and some were beginning to resist their captors in small ways. The explosion had given them hope that someone was fighting back against their oppressors. Jake learned that the slaves knew more about Zephyrian technology than the aliens did themselves. The bugs were good at using their biological weapons, but they did not understand how to repair or improve them. The slaves did all the real technical work while their masters took credit for the results. Kex showed Jake a map of the alien base that marked all the important facilities and weak points. The Corvani had been planning their own rebellion for years but were too few and too weak to fight the guards alone. Jake realized that with his military knowledge and their technical skills, they could do much more damage together than either could do alone. Jake taught the Corvani basic guerrilla warfare tactics using simple drawings in the dirt. He showed them how to make improvised explosive devices from alien technology and how to attack supply lines to maximum effect. The slaves were quick learners and eager to strike back at their captors. The first joint operation was an attack on a fuel processing plant run mostly by slave labor. The Corvani workers inside the plant created a distraction while Jake and his new allies attacked the guards from outside. The plant was destroyed and 30 Zephyrian overseers were killed while no slaves were hurt. Word of the successful attack spread quickly through the slave population. Other groups began contacting Jake through the Corvani network, asking for weapons and training. Jake found himself becoming the leader of a growing rebellion that included dozens of different alien species who had been enslaved by the Zephyrians. The rebellion grew stronger each day as more slaves joined the fight. Jake set up training camps in hidden locations where he taught aliens how to use captured weapons and coordinate attacks. The slaves provided detailed intelligence about Zephyrian facilities and helped plan operations that caused maximum damage, but the most important contribution from the slaves was their knowledge of Zephyrian weaknesses. Jake learned that the aliens were completely dependent on their biological technology and could not function without it. If the rebels could disrupt the systems that maintained their weapons and vehicles, the entire alien army would be helpless. Jake planned a series of coordinated strikes against the biological maintenance facilities that kept the Zephyrian war machine running. The slaves would sabotage the systems from inside, while Jake's teams attacked the guards from outside. If the plan worked, the alien army would be crippled and unable to launch their planned invasion of human space. The night before the big attack, Jake looked out at his rebel army and felt proud of what they had accomplished. Hundreds of beings from 20 different worlds were working together to fight for their freedom. What had started as one human soldier trying to survive had become a revolution that might change the fate of the entire galaxy. Jake checked his weapons one last time and prepared for the biggest battle of his life. Tomorrow he would either lead his people to victory or die trying to give them a chance at freedom. The final battle began at dawn when Jake's rebel army attacked 12 different Zephyrian facilities at the same time. Explosions lit up the purple sky as the slaves struck back at their oppressors with 20 years of stored anger and hatred. The sound of weapons fire echoed across the red landscape like thunder that would not stop. Jake led the main assault against the Central Command Center where Commander Vextha was trying to coordinate his confused forces. The building was a massive structure that looked like a giant insect hive with thousands of Zephyrian soldiers defending it. Jake's team had to fight their way through 3 layers of defensive positions to reach the commander. The battle was chaos with aliens shooting in all directions and explosions destroying everything in sight. Jake's rebels used their knowledge of Zephyrian technology to turn the aliens' own weapons against them. Captured energy cannons blasted holes in defensive walls while stolen aircraft bombed enemy positions from above. Inside the command center, Jake found himself face to face with Commander Vexta in the main control room. The giant alien was twice as tall as Jake and had 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. His black eyes burned with rage as he looked at the human who had destroyed his perfect military operation. Vexta spoke in clicking English, telling Jake that one small human could never defeat the mighty Zephyrian Empire. The commander promised that even if Jake won this battle, there were millions more aliens who would come to avenge this defeat. Humanity would still be crushed under the weight of superior numbers and technology. Jake replied that the commander was wrong about humans and wrong about his own people. The Zephyrians were not superior because they depended on their slaves to do all their real work. Without the beings they had conquered and enslaved, the aliens were just bullies with fancy weapons they did not understand. The fight between Jake and Vexta was brutal and personal. The commander used his size and 4 arms to attack from multiple directions, while Jake relied on his human speed and tactical thinking to stay alive. Energy blasts burned the air around them as they circled each other looking for weakness. Jake's breakthrough came when he realized that Vexta fought like all Zephyrians by following predictable patterns. The commander would attack high, then low, then middle in the same sequence every time. Jake timed his movements to avoid the attacks and strike back when the alien was off balance. The killing blow came when Jake used his suit's power to jump higher than Vexta expected and land on the alien's back. Jake put his rifle against the commander's brain case and fired 3 shots that ended the fight instantly. Green blood splattered the control room walls as the most dangerous Zephyrian on the planet died, with their commander dead and their communication systems destroyed. The remaining Zephyrian forces began to surrender or flee the planet. Many alien soldiers threw down their weapons when they saw their slaves turning against them with captured equipment. The perfect order of the hive mind had been replaced by confusion and fear. Jake's rebels took control of the alien base and freed thousands more slaves who had been hidden in underground facilities. Beings from 50 different worlds emerged, blinking into the sunlight, many of them seeing the sky for the first time in decades. The liberation was more complete than Jake had ever dreamed possible, but the best news came when Jake's team managed to repair the communication array and make contact with human forces. A rescue fleet had been searching for Jake's lost patrol and had detected the massive explosions on Vex Prime. Ships were already on their way to investigate what they thought was a natural disaster. When the human fleet arrived, they found not just one surviving Marine, but an entire planet in rebellion against their Zephyrian oppressors. Jake had to explain to shocked fleet commanders how one crashed transport had led to the liberation of an entire world and the destruction of a major alien military base. The freed slaves chose to fight alongside humanity against the Zephyrian Empire rather than return to their devastated homeworlds. They brought with them detailed knowledge of alien technology and military plans that gave human forces a huge advantage in the continuing war. Jake's accidental rebellion had created powerful new allies. Jake's story spread through human space like wildfire, inspiring soldiers and civilians who had been losing hope in the war against impossible odds. Military academies studied his tactics and strategies became required reading for all officers. The idea that one determined person could change the course of history gave new courage to everyone fighting for freedom. The Battle of Vex Prime, as historians would later call it, marked the turning point in the war against the Zephyrian Empire. The aliens never again achieved the coordination and overwhelming numerical advantage that had made them so dangerous. Their slave rebellions spread to other worlds inspired by Jake's example. Jake himself was promoted and given command of a special unit that included volunteers from all the species he had helped liberate. They became known as the Freedom Fighters, and their motto was taken from Jake's own words. One soldier can make a difference, but together we can change the galaxy. Years later, when the war was finally won and the Zephyrian Empire had collapsed, Jake would look back on his time as a stranded Marine and smile. He had crashed on an alien world facing a million enemies with nothing but his rifle and his determination to survive. He had ended up leading a revolution that freed entire worlds and changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The lesson Jake taught was simple but powerful. Numbers alone do not win wars, and technology alone does not guarantee victory. What matters most is the courage to fight for what is right even when the odds seem impossible. One human soldier had proven that spirit and determination could overcome any enemy, no matter how large or powerful they might seem to be.